actually need an opponent to practice. You can just decide, tell yourself, I'm going to have to cast Force of Will 3 times to go off this time. Can I do it? And just practice it. See what happens.
Sure. So for those of you just joining us, I'm Gavin Verhey. I'm here with Adrian Sullivan, and we are about to watch a pretty interesting matchup, semifinals here in Atlanta at the Star City Games Open Series Legacy portion. On your right, David Thomas. David is playing Dredge. We saw him earlier in this tournament. He's playing a very fast Dredge build. He's got Lion's Eye Diamond, Deep Analysis. He's got no Tireless Tribes. He's just all combo all the time. And that's going to pose a problem for Alix Hatfield, also playing a combo deck. He is playing High Tide, of course, his trusty High Tide deck. But we think it's going to be a little too slow. We think Dredge definitely has the advantage here, plus Dredge has Cabal Therapy, which is some discard spells to interact with Alix. But Alix, very much a master of the High Tide archetype. And, you know, he could definitely pull this out with some tight play and support draws by Thomas.
David Thomas only has 3 Cabal Therapies in his main, which makes him a little bit less strong, but Alix, I think, still has the edge here. And remember that it is possible that Alix might have the ways to, just with Force of Will, stop the initial outlets. Even though there are very many, you have always, or you've often seen Dredge fail to get an outlet to get going.
Yeah, and you'll see Alix, I'm sure, is looking over his hand carefully, trying to figure out if he has the tools to deal with a good Dredge draw. In the meantime, make sure to stay tuned, because between Game 1 and Game 2, while they're sideboarding, we're going to ask a question for SCG Premium. It's our SCG Premium contest, and if you answer the question correctly on Twitter, you'll be entered in, out of all the people who answer the question correctly, an opportunity to win 6 months of free premium. That is a lot of free premium. You'll be able to read all kinds of great reports. Maybe even the Hatfield brothers will write something for us. Who knows? So you're going to want to stay tuned. At the very least, you'll get content by Jerry Thompson, Mike Flores, Brian Kibler, Patrick Chapin, all kinds of great writers, great theorists, great deck builders, and especially with the Grand Prix coming up next weekend, with the 4 upcoming Star City Games Opens, followed by the Invitational, you're really going to want to have that technology edge.
Absolutely, absolutely. And one of the things that I think, this is again one of those matchups where, in this case, I think that the who goes first is actually a little bit less important. They both are going to be exploding about the same time, but they also both get real value out of an extra card.
I really feel like who goes first here is very important.
Yeah? Tell me more about that.
I think David Thomas' deck, they're both playing combo decks. I think that one turn makes a huge difference, because when you're trying to combo out, David does have Cabal Therapy to rip apart Alix's hand, but he's going to go trying to go as fast as possible to beat the Mono Blue High Tide deck. Where on Alix's side, having the extra turn could be very crucial when you're racing against a combo deck like this, when you're trying to make sure that they can't get going, the engines that they need to get going. And especially since Dredge is on average faster than the High Tide deck, the High Tide deck being on the play might be able to swing it in its favor a little bit.
Okay, I stand corrected. I think that you've been very convincing with that.
So, now there's the potential that the game goes long, in which case being on the draw might actually be good thanks to Cabal Therapy. Also, putting the Dredge deck on the draw can be dangerous, because they can go turn 1 draw, discard Golgari Grave Troll, and then start going to town. Of course, the danger there is if your Breakthrough or similar, your Careful Study gets forced, then Alix might have a chance to pull into the game. So it looks like David Thomas is taking a mulligan, and we've seen him take a ton of mulligans so far in this event.
Dredge, one of the best decks at mulliganing, doesn't need very much to get off to a good start.
Yeah, you can easily go to 2, 3, 4 cards and still be able to win the game, which is crazy when you think about it. When your graveyard is your resource and all that matters is getting a couple key cards into your graveyard, you just have to be able to discard your Golgari Grave Troll, and you can start an engine going. Of course, purely Grave Troll Dredges probably won't be enough against another combo deck, but we'll see what happens as David goes down deeper into the card hole here. Alexander Shearer, who played Dredge a lot, says that going first is important here. High Tide has very little it can do directly to Dredge's game plan, so the extra turn is crucial. Mika Buchanan on Twitter says that it seems like Elves versus Dredge will go to Elves. If Dredge doesn't hit Archon or Flimkin Zealot, Elves will still be able to go off the next turn despite how many zombies David Thomas would be able to make. So a lot of interesting discussion happening depending on who wins this game, who wins this match. Alix in the finals versus David in the finals. We've made some predictions, but who knows what's going to actually happen. We'll have to see it play out in front of our eyes, and so will you, the viewers at home, watching this match. So let's see what happens. Looks like they're okay with their hands here. So Alix Hatfield leads on Polluted Delta. Going to find an island and probably see some kind of cantrip here. Haven't gotten a glimpse at his hand yet, but...
One of the 10.
Yeah, he's got plenty. Between 4 Ponder, 2 Preordained, 4 Brainstorm. He has a lot of ways to dig deeper into his deck on the first turn. And... So, worth noting, David Thomas's targets for Dread Return are Flimkin, one of targets, that is, are Flimkin Zealot, Angel of Despair, Sphinx of Lost Truths. He's got an Ancestors Chosen and Blazing Archon in the sideboard. He has no Iona, for whatever that's worth, so we cannot return Iona, name blue, and shut off Alix Hatfield's deck.
We got a Preordained to start things off.
And so Alex is going to dig a little deeper, see if he can find what he needs, and he just ships both cards to the south and picks up a new one.
Yep. Alexander Shearer, who talked about, who you talked about earlier, says that if you do get forced, it's often worse to be on the play than on the draw.
That sounds about right. So there's Dark Slick Shores, the Scars of Mirrodin Land, power index even as far back as Legacy.
Careful study resolves here from David Thomas.
Yep, no force from Alex, and so David is going to have the opportunity to discard some dredgers.
Deep analysis? Oh, that's not necessarily too exciting.
There's no dredge cards in David Thomas's hand.
Yeah, he had to wait. No dredge cards.
Wow, and that might be the opening Alix Hatfield needs.
Yeah.
Without the quick dredge start by David Thomas, Alex won't be able to get into the game.
I think that at this point, turn 1, no dredging, this actually puts the game very much towards Alix Hatfield. What you're basically seeing right now is that the flop came down on Alex's side.
Sure, I mean...
It's not over, but it certainly moved the percentages quite a bit.
It's not over, but it slowed David Thomas down by 1 to 2 turns, and that's going to be what Alix Hatfield needs to make sure his combo gets online. Now, the one thing is David Thomas does have disruption. If he finds Cabal Therapy, it could really slow down Alex's start, but we'll see if he finds it.
You know, just a single Cabal Therapy hitting Alex while David isn't going off, that's not that scary. What is scary is the idea of David Thomas getting some real momentum and having that Cabal Therapy as a means to disrupt Alex as he's going off.
Now, David Hand looks pretty wretched. I see a bridge from below, a Narcomoeba, another land, a Cephalid Coliseum.
Was he just maybe thinking that Careful Study would be enough to get there? Narcomoeba, ooh, doctor.
So there's a turn 2 Narcomoeba. He's got a Cabal Therapy in his hand.
So that's 2 discard opportunities.
So he could strip Alex's hand a little bit, and he could potentially target himself to get that bridge into the graveyard if he wanted, but this is not the start David Thomas wanted at all. This is slower than slow. There's not been any dredge happening.
I might have gone down yet another card.
Yeah. I think I would have too, but David's the one playing in the semifinals, so what he does goes, and he's probably played a lot of dredge. So let's see, that's Intuition, Merchant Scroll, Flooded Strand, handful of cards for Alix Hatfield, and he knows that hiding cards here is valuable because of the Cabal Therapy that David Thomas could potentially find.
Third land, Island, Merchant Scroll, shuffling away those cards that Brainstorm put there, just making that into essentially a quasi Ancestral Recall. Not a true Ancestral Recall, but in a certain way, in terms of card quality, close.
And so Alex searches up High Tide, and so that gives a card that David knows is in Alex's hand for that Cabal Therapy. So I expect to see Cabal Therapy on High Tide right there.
Oh, absolutely.
Just strips that High Tide away.
If there's anything else that's saucy in Alex's hand, then that Narcomoeba can go to work. Take care of, with the Cabal Therapy flashback, take care of yet another card.
Yep, go to the graveyard, where Narcomoeba often belongs. Although it's usually reluctant to go there.
I actually, like to think of it as being gleeful to go there, but not in this situation. Oh, look at that. We have our first dredge card. It could be possible that after hitting that High Tide, he might just say to himself, I'm going to discard my my own imp here to my Cabal Therapy.
Yep. And so
there's the High Tide, leaving an Intuition in hand?
Intuition and Time Spiral and Ponder. So his hand is Intuition, Time Spiral, Ponder, and Island.
So here's what can happen on the subsequent turn. If he is not further disrupted, Alix Hatfield can go Ponder, end of turn, Intuition for High Tide, High Tide, High Tide, and then on the subsequent turn, go for the attempt to go off with Time Spiral.
Right. Time Spiral actually kind of interesting against the dredge deck. It shuffles their graveyard back into
the graveyard goes back in. That's a good time.
Which normally is very bad for David Thomas. In this case, it's actually kind of okay because he's got nothing going on anyway. Not that it matters usually. Most of the time, you're going to kill them on the turn you go off.
And he says to himself here, what's he going to name? Oh, there it is.
Yeah,
There's a stinkweed.
He knows he's got a dredge if he wants to win this game. And that puts 5 cards in David Thomas's graveyard, so he's 2 off from being able to activate that Cephalid Coliseum. And he flashbacks his Deep Analysis, drawing 2 cards, and dredging that stinkweed up, so now he can activate the Coliseum on the next turn, and he's going to get some dredge action going here. So
1, 2, 3, 4, 5.
So
I didn't see anything that was dredgy there, did you?
No, he just flipped a Deep Analysis, which certainly doesn't have dredge.
And a card.
Wow, his dredgers are hiding. He just drew Underground Sea, not a dredge card. And
Untap here for Alix Hatfield. He's going to start out the turn, draw a card, probably use his cantrip for 1 blue first, and then end of the turn. If David Thomas doesn't win, Intuition and go for the win himself.
right. Let's see.
Was that a Force of Will that Alix maybe just drew? I'm not 100% sure of that, but I think it might be. Let me see your graveyard, Alix says. And he sees a Deep Analysis, and I'm not sure if there's anything else in there that actually looks at all scary. There's no dredgers in there. There might be a Bridge from Below. I can't remember if that's in David Thomas's hand, but there is a Deep Analysis, and that's basically about it in terms of real action.
Let's see. So I think Alix is going to...
Here's the Ponder.
Yep. He's going to decide up to kill next turn. Like you said.
If one of these 3 is of use, it'll go into his hand, and then the rest will be shuffled away by the Intuition.
Yep. I saw at least 1 land in there. I thought maybe I saw 2.
Yeah, Alix has an island in his hand, so he has the extra land to make sure the Intuition happens. He doesn't have to ponder for an Intuition, or
Right.
for a land.
Yeah.
Shuffles it up, nothing useful there.
Yeah.
A random card is better than the cards he saw there.
And gonna shuffle them back in, grab a new one off the top. See what Alix Hatfield finds here.
Now, just because of the potential explosive power of a dredge deck, he's going to definitely want to go off next turn, even if it doesn't look like David Thomas is a threat.
Yeah, like dredge can kill you at any point. Plus, even if it doesn't kill you, it can get back Cabal Therapies and wreck your hand.
Is a big deal.
So this is actually one matchup. Alix is a very disciplined player. He plays slow a lot of the time, and takes his time in all matchups to make sure that he has the maximum possible number of turns. But this is one matchup where he has to kind of blow his combo early because he can't afford for David Thomas to dredge a bunch of cards back and get Cabal Therapy into his graveyard.
It's not unreasonable for that threat to come out.
So
and now David Thomas giving the Magic Shuffle here. Random card, hoping that Alix Hatfield doesn't get any new tools to join this here for him.
Yep.
Alix Hatfield likely here to, unless he finds a High Tide, to lay the island and go Intuition for High Tide, High Tide, High Tide. And that looks like a Candelabra of
Yep.
Tanos
That
to me.
Candelabra is going to be great here. Giving him, on the next turn, it's going to help fuel him even further. You can put out that Candelabra and make a ton of mana after the High Tide, leaving him with mana post-Time Spiral, which is always nice.
Okay, and now David Thomas needs something good to happen. Goes for the Cephalid Coliseum. He does have a Deep Analysis in the yard,
Right.
so after he discards some dredgers, that Deep Analysis will be able to start kicking things into gear. There goes a Bridge from Below. There goes the 1 dredger and another dredger.
So he found another dredger.
He needs mana here. Does he have any?
Well, gonna find out here in a second. So he's gonna dredge that Stinkweed Imp for 5 cards. Stinkweed Imp Breakthrough. Narcomoeba comes into play. Bridge from Below. Angel of Despair. Now I'm sure David is looking for Cabal Therapy here because
There is a mana in his hand.
Because he knows that Alix has Intuition, and so he can play Cabal Therapy, and if it resolves, he needs Intuition, making sure that Alix can't get High Tide. If he casts Intuition in response, he can just name High Tide.
Now, Breakthrough is being cast. I'm not sure if Alix Hatfield has a Force of Will in his hand, but if he does, this would be a perfect time to cast it.
If you have Force, you have to use it here, but I don't think Alix has Force.
If he has the Force, if he has the spare blue card to be able to go off with.
I don't think he has the Force. Then this is going to be pretty brutal by David Thomas.
Putting it out there in the red zone for building up a stack. Alix thinks.
Unless he drew it, he drew the Candelabra off the Ponder. We knew his hand before that. I don't think he's got it.
I think he does have it. Like Intuition.
No, he doesn't.
No, he's not. That's a mom.
He's got a Mind Over
There we
Matter. Yeah. So he does not have a way to counter it. He's running a little bit of a bluff here. Trying to trick David Thomas and think he has force of will, but...
Intuition.
So you go intuition for force of will.
Intuition for force. That's a possibility.
And I think he's like, well, draw is kind of slow. If that resolves, I think I'm going to lose. So I have to go for force here.
Yeah.
And hope to draw high tide.
That is a... Basically, with that choice, he had two paths before him without having the force of will before. Path number one, hope David Thomas doesn't get the cabal therapies he needs to make things go really, really awry.
Yeah.
Path number two, intuition for force, and then hope to find another portion of the combo.
Yeah.
It looks like he tossed out mind over matter from his hand.
Yeah, that sounds like the right card to pitch to me. I don't think it's going to be that relevant here.
Yeah.
So the
He's
other
got Time Spiral Candelabra telling us in his hand.
The other thing Alix can do to just refuel on cards is if he hits 6 mana, he can just cast that Time Spiral and draw 6 untap 6 lands, or draw 7 untap 6 lands.
Here's
but
the dredge.
that's still a couple turns away.
Is that a second breakthrough?
That's what it looks like to me.
Yeah.
So Alix did all that work, and it just didn't matter. Yeah, he's going to be able to dredge a ton of cards here, get a bunch of therapies, and Alix Hatfield, I think, is going to fundamentally lose this turn.
I think he might be out of dredgers.
Even then...
Oh, there's one left.
Even then, I still saw Cabal Therapies in the graveyard. I saw Bridge from Blows. There's Dread Return.
Oh, there we go. That's...
Yeah, this is it for Alix Hatfield. I thought Alix Hatfield might have a pretty good shot this round, but...
I thought it looked really good for him.
Yep, and then David just changed one thing, found what he needed, and there it went. It went from nothing to drawing that Stinkweed Imp and suddenly being able to deep analysis himself to right back into the game.
Are you sure we saw Cabal Therapies?
Pretty sure there's a Cabal Therapy in there.
Here's the Cabal Therapy that he's used.
Right, there's one that he used. I mean, I'm not 100% certain that we saw one.
Looks like he's about to say go.
It just seems likely.
He says go.
Wow. So the problem is Alix Hatfield still can't really go off unless he draws High Tide here. He has to rip it.
Oh, he knocks the deck.
Certainly, Alix is a man good at ripping cards, but...
What is that?
It's Brainstorm.
Okay. So now he can still go off if he gets a land on a High Tide.
Nope. I see Time Spiral, Land, Ponder, I think. But no High Tide.
A word from the street, Saul Malka, our second draft champion in the draft challenge.
Yeah, so awesome. So our first draft challenge won by Shaheen Sarani. Our second draft challenge won by Saul Malka. Two great players came out to play in these draft challenges, and they just provide such an awesome opportunity. If you don't want to play Legacy on Sunday, that's okay. You can come out and play in these draft challenges, win some money, win some open points. It's totally worth being there. So congratulations to Saul Malka and Shaheen Sarani, our two draft champions for the weekend.
I'm really happy to hear that both of those friends of mine were able to take that. Good guys, good players, and just really great Magic players. Just to have, I wish we would have had an opportunity to see them under the lights, but we've got some exciting legacy to show you.
Yeah, and this is pretty exciting.
Well, I find Time Spiral exciting. High Tide is a great deck.
Dredge also, interesting to watch David Thomas play. He kept the hand that looked kind of sketchy to start with, but he's maneuvered it back, found that Stinkweed up, and maneuvered it back right into a good position. Granted, that careful study on the first turn, too. I'm sure he was hoping to find Dredger, which he didn't, but it hasn't stopped him from having a decent draw this game.
That looks like put one card back there.
And Alix trying to figure out what he can do, but I don't think he has a line of play unless he thinks David Thomas is just going to whiff. I mean, I guess theoretically David could dredge, not hit Cabal Therapy or another Narcomoeba, but he has Icarids to bring back.
The Icarids aren't of concern. They're not going to be enough to kill Alix here.
Well, but they are going to give him a third creature.
For the Dread Returns, which is going to get the Sphinx, which is enough to make it happen.
Sphinx or Flamekin Zealot or any number of things, yeah. So...
Well, I mean, if he doesn't, maybe he could go here for a Force of Will. There's a land.
Yeah, I mean, you could try to find Force to deal with Dread Return, which is reasonable. It strips Alix of options, but I think it's his best shot at this point. So we'll see what Alix finds. His hand is just Candelabra, Time Spiral, or does he have something else? I know he's got Time Spiral in his hand. I can't quite make out the other card. Is it
Yeah,
Ponder?
I think he put the
Yep, so he's got Ponder.
Ponder. There we go.
Looks at his top 3, sees what his third card is. So he's got Meditate hiding out there. But I can't really afford to skip his turn. So yeah, he's just going to shuffle. And there's going to be a pretty sick card here for Alix Hatfield to have a shot.
Presuming that a Christmas miracle happens and David Thomas doesn't kill him, Alix Hatfield could top deck an island, cast Time Spiral, and then come back. But it takes first the step of David Thomas' Christmas miracle not making the kill happen.
Right.
That's so deeply unlikely that, yeah.
I mean, a lot of things have to go right, but we'll see if they do.
Go, he says.
Alix Hatfield very quickly says go.
And let's see where the Grave Troll is. Icarids are going to be coming out.
Yep, so Icarid comes out to play.
Times 1, times 2.
And now Dread Return can be flashbacked. And I think we're going to see some dredging happen too, which means we'll dig closer to Cabal Therapy.
And David Thomas just quick make sure what kind of cards he has left in his deck so that he doesn't overdo it with the Sphinx when he brings that back. If he does choose to bring back the Sphinx.
You do not want to accidentally deck yourself here. That would be awful. Note that you can't dredge though. If you're not allowed to dredge. So say if you have 5 cards in your library, you can't dredge a Golgari, Grave Troll, and mill yourself. So it's hard to make that mistake, but if it is exact, you have to be careful. So there's the Flamekin Zealot going into David Thomas's graveyard. And let's see what happens now. Taps 2.
The deep analysis there?
Yep, looks like deep analysis to me.
Okay.
Still digging for Cabal Therapy.
All over but the crying.
I'm sure he's looking for Cabal Therapy. I think he's still got it pretty handily here, but
Oh yeah. This is done.
yeah, there's Cabal Therapy to lock it all up anyway. So David Thomas is going to be able to take game 1 here pretty quickly, and it's going to be time to go to the sideboards for Alix Hatfield and David Thomas. And Alix doesn't have a lot in a sideboard. He's playing a wish board, which means that he doesn't really have a lot of options to bring in. He can maybe bring in some ways to deal with the dredgers if he wants. He can bring in some bounce spells.
I mean, one of the things that's really difficult for Alix Hatfield is Pact of Negation is the kind of counterspell you cast while you're going off. Alix is not going to want to be casting this to stop Thomas from going off. It's just going to be a way for him to die.
Yep, and there you go. So David Thomas takes the first game. And we're going to go into game 2 here against Alix Hatfield shortly. In the meantime, we've got 6 months of free premium to give away.
Wow.
And we already gave away 3 months of free premium. We gave away plenty of free premium in the standard top 8. And now we've got 6 more months to hand out here.
Okay. So we've been talking all throughout the top 8 earlier in the day that there were 2 decks that were in this, sorry, 3 different decks that were in this that there were multiple copies of. Now, one of those deck archetypes did not make it past the quarterfinals. There were 2 copies of this archetype. In one of these archetypes, it did not make it past the quarterfinals. What archetype had 2 copies but did not make it past the quarterfinals? And what you want to do is you want to send that to hashtag SCG Premium. That's the important thing to remember. Hashtag SCG Premium. And right now, do you happen to remember what it was? I mean, if you were watching all day, if you were reading the coverage, if you were paying attention, you'd be able to answer this question and get 6 free months of premium at Star City Games.
I know what the answer to the question is, but some of you guys might not. I'm tweeting it right now. And one important thing to keep in mind, make sure not to send us a tweet is fine if you want. You can go at SCG Live. That's cool, that's great. But make sure to put in the hashtag SCG Premium. Otherwise, it's not going to work out. So we have to have the hashtag, and we'll choose one person out of all the people who get the question correct. And we will give them 6 months of free premium, which is pretty awesome.
You know, I'm a big fan of premium. I just make sure that I'm always reading premium. Every day something's published. If I'm awake I'm Central Standard Time. That means 11 p.m. is when Star City Games, new information goes up. If I'm awake, I'm reading it at 11 p.m., at 11:01 p.m. I'm reading it as quickly as I can just to start consuming it. This is just such valuable information that you get to hear and get to read. And, you know, the Star City Games website has so many great, talented writers. You know, I can't even begin to think of how many times I've read a Patrick Chapin article and I thought to myself, wow, it was really brilliant. One of my favorite articles of all time, Pat Chapin's Information Cascades article.
Yeah, I love that article.
Such a brilliant article. And when I say brilliant, I mean it's one of those things you read read, and it's mind-blowing. There are moments where you see these premium articles that are just, they can change the way you think about how Magic is played.
Yeah.
Of course, it's not just Patrick Chapin that's writing. We have so many people that are writing for us.
Including potentially some people in this top 8 will probably write articles for us, too. So it's pretty exciting stuff. You mentioned that refreshes for you at 11 p.m., you said?
Yeah.
Yeah, I feel lucky. On the West Coast, we get it at 9 p.m., and I always, whenever I travel to the East Coast, I was like, man, it takes so much longer to refresh here. We have to wait till midnight.
Midnight. Oh. Okay. Alix Hatfield, he has to know in this matchup that he's playing here that this is a pretty rough one for him. He has so few ways to interact with his opponent. A repeal is one of the few ways, but that's not that exciting, partly because if he brings in repeals to try to interact with his opponent, if his opponent doesn't have anything to repeal, it just rots. It just rots in his hand.
Yeah. I mean, let's see, even rougher is that, like, game 1, we saw David Thomas had a pretty rough draw there. But he still managed to win, which shows how bad of a matchup this is for Alix Hatfield. Can you repeat the premium question for everyone out there who wants to hear it? I just tweeted it for you
Absolutely.
guys.
It was just been tweeted, and you can, of course, for those of you who are following along right now, that tweet, not only is it from the SCG Live, it's at the hashtag SCGATL. That's where you'll find the question. Where you want to tweet this question, SCG Premium, and the question is, we had 3 decks that had 2 copies in this top 8.
Right.
One of those archetypes did not make the final 4. What deck that had 2 copies in the top 8 did not make the final 4? And remember, the winner of that is going to be getting 6 months of Star City Games Premium.
Yep.
Really quick, I just want to say congratulations to my friend Saul Malka. Good job.
Thank you very much, Ader.
Yeah.
Pleasure.
What did we've got a couple minutes here while these guys are shuffling up. What did you draft in the top 8 of your draft pod?
Well, I led off with a Hellkite Igniter in
Good way to start.
And picked up good red where I could, and if there wasn't a good red card, I took artifacts, and I picked up a Phyrexian Rager kind of mid-pack and got another quality black card, and when I opened up the first pack of Scars, I could have taken a Grasp of Darkness. That would be the natural choice for my red-black deck. There wasn't anything amazing in red, but there was a Sunblast Angel staring back at me from the
Sunblast Angel.
Very nice.
Rare spot. So I punted the black immediately, ran with the Sunblast, got a Skinrender. I had a chance at a Skinrender like 4th or 5th pick in that second pack. Took an Origin Spellbomb, just kept supporting the white, and made somebody play in black very happy, but I ended up with, enough quality white cards, double revoke. Sorry.
Okay. And I'm going to bring us back to our match. Thank you, Saul. Congratulations. I'm always happy to see you win.
It's great to hear from you. Congratulations again. Maybe we'll see you at some more events in the future here for Star City Games. Great to see you.
Alix starts out with a turn 1 land. David Thomas has Underground Sea and a Lion's Eye Diamond.
And there's careful study for David Thomas. And that'll...
oh boy, so a Force of Will would be nice on it, but that Lion's Eye Diamond is backup for making sure that all of those cards can be in his yard if there's any kind of... There's a thug.
And yeah, with only an island for Alix Hatfield. Alix did not have a turn one like brainstorm or pondering or anything of that sort. So he must have been pretty happy with the hand he kept.
One of the big distinctions between this modern High Tide deck and the High Tide decks of yore, the High Tide decks of yore often had a lot of control spells. This, just 4 Force of Will, and the ability to Cunning Wish for cards like Pact of Negation, means that it's more closely akin to almost a beatdown deck. It's not quite on that same level of a control deck that you would see before.
Let's see, and there's Careful Study. Another one from David Thomas, threatening to dredge just a bunch more cards.
I think this one's going to be pretty quick.
Man, it's so brutal. That dredge deck, even with a poor draw, still has managed to off Alix. And this looks like a pretty good draw this time, which will be even worse for Alix. Like, if you look at the board, there's Cephalid Coliseum plus LED plus a Careful Study on the stack. David Thomas could easily go off of this turn or the next turn. Do we have any information so far on the other table?
And it looks as though High Tide has won the first game versus Elves in the other bracket.
Wow. And Dredges gets an Archimeeba. And all kinds of dredging is happening here thanks to careful study. And let's see what more is happening this turn.
One thing that we need to do, apparently, we're hearing from Glenn Jones that our voices are carrying over to the other match. There are many less competitors here now in the venue, and so there's not anything to make our voices not go over there. So we might bring it down a notch.
Sure. What we normally do here is we just want to talk about cards and players' hands. What's on the board, I think, is public information. So obviously we're not going to tell the players what's going on, but we'll be quiet and not talk about what's in their hands. I whisper when we do. And let's see.
There's the
Coliseum. Unfortunately, or fortunately or unfortunately, depending on how you look at it, there's not much more to talk about that Alix isn't seeing in this match.
Yeah, I mean, everything's pretty public right now.
Yeah, the graveyard is in front of him. The fact that he's dredging it seems pretty clear, and it's going to happen pretty soon. We go 1, 2, 3, and by it I mean Alix's defeat. I can't imagine Alix coming back from this.
I mean, it is possible. Should David Thomas not win, if Alix has High Tide with the Candelabra could mean a time spiral. So it's pretty bad, but it's not necessarily over. It's just probably over.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know. So for Alix to win this game, he has to go untap,
land, High Tide, time spiral. That's all he needs.
Yeah, land, High Tide. I mean, he has Candelabra.
Yeah.
So he could maybe even play 2 High Tides.
If he had that would be even better.
Yeah. Of course, assuming his hand doesn't get picked apart by Cabal Therapy.
Exactly. I mean, like I said, it's almost certainly David Thomas's win, but there is a small window.
There's always that chance.
I wouldn't say always, but there's a chance right now. Right now, the tiniest little sliver of hope can still dangle in front of Alix Hatfield.
Yeah, fair enough. So Alix looking through David Thomas's graveyard, trying to identify what there is to get him here. See some Dread Returns, see some Icarids. See a number of cards that Alix Hatfield not so happy to see. And Alix uses the Brainstorm right now. Going to draw 1, 2, 3. Sees Candelabra. Sees Candelabra and 2 other cards I'm not sure about. Let's see. So he did draw a High Tide. That's something. If he doesn't get his hand annihilated and he gets another turn, he could High Tide along with Time Spiral and be able to pull this one out. But I don't know what the odds are of that happening.
And let's pretend, for the sake of argument, that, you know, for the sake of argument, let's pretend that he starts trying to go off on 3 lands. It's really hard to go off on 3 lands. If he's even allowed to get to that point in the game, it's incredibly difficult to go off on 3 lands.
Alix plays Force, pitching High Tide, which makes me wonder how many High Tides exactly are in his hand. Or if he feels like he's going to get Cabal Therapied for High Tide. So we'll see what David Thomas chooses to do here.
Wow. A note from Glenn Jones. It sounds like the first game, Elves killed himself with a summoning pact and then not being able to pay for it in the subsequent turn.
You were in LA last week. Do you remember what happened in one of Paul Reitzel's matches?
I don't know.
So Paul Reitzel playing Elves, I believe. His opponent also playing Elves. He tweeted about this. Game 1, he had the Game 1, forgot to pay for his Summoner's Pact. Game 2, his opponent forgot to pay for his Summoner's Pact when he had the Game 1. So let's let Cabal Therapy gets flashbacked, getting some zombie tokens. So
right.
The moral of the story here is be very careful when you're playing with packs.
Now we have a Time Spiral in hand.
Yeah.
And
Time Spiral, Brainstorm, Candelabra.
Yeah, I mean, that does not look like a hand that can come back if you ask me.
Yep, and Cabal Therapy flashback for David Thomas. There's another. Yep, takes the Brainstorm. And yeah, that's it. I mean, I assume David is going to go. Okay, he passes back. Okay, so all he has is 3 points of power.
Is that a high tide there?
That is a high tide, but he doesn't have a
You
land.
lay the candelabra, you say go, and
Cross your fingers.
Well, let's see. If you high tide, use the 2 mana, untap the 2 lands, lay the next candelabra, and you'll have 3 mana. Tap the candelabra to go down to 1 mana. Nope, you get to 5. You get to 5 if you play that out. So I think you just lay the candelabra. And I don't remember 2 cards down what's on top. If that's an island, Alix can make this happen. But if there's not an island there, then it's just done.
Yeah, I mean we'll see what David Thomas does on his next turn, but it's gonna be rough. Corrected by Tom, it was Matt Sperling versus Harrison Beach with the Double Summoners Pact. So just wanted to put that out there. So let's see what happens. Alix trying to figure out if there's anything he could do.
There's the second candelabra.
Yeah, the second candelabra. That's his only play, really.
Now, with the luckiest of luck, it's possible that that Alix might be able to hang on, but it's gonna really like. I'm imagining. What do we have in that year? Is there still a Dread Returns? I love chat. Go David.
That is what it says. He dredges Bridge from Below.
Cabal Therapy, I think I see there.
Yep.
There goes the Time Spiral, and that's all of the hope that might have been left.
Was
is
that
now
Cabal
gone.
Therapy or Icrid? It was one of the two. I think it was. Yep, it was.
There's
Therapy.
a Therapy. Goodbye, little zombie.
Yeah.
There's a whiff there.
And
There's a Dread Returns
there's
there.
Dread Return getting back Flamekin Zealot, getting a bunch of zombies.
There
and
we
that's
go.
it. That's
David
the match.
Thomas.
Wow.
2-0.
After dominating the tournament, Alix Hatfield falls to David Thomas's Dredge deck, and David Thomas with Dredge will go to the finals. He will either face Elves or